Evening, everybody, and welcome to Adoption UK. Lovely to have you all here tonight. So tonight it's all about an Ask Anything. And I don't think there's any questions that one of us won't answer, but we're prepared to be tested on that. So the way that the webinars work is that we can't see you and we can't hear you, but we've got the chat running and we've got question and answers. So please feel free to drop anything in question and answer or the chat, and we shall answer them as we go along. It's a really informal evening, so, and also we won't use anybody's name, so we'll just say a member has asked this question, so everything's kept absolutely confidential. So I'm going to hand straight over to the team and ask Rob to introduce himself.
Ooh.
Put you on the spot first.
Okay.
And we'll go through and everyone will introduce themselves and then we're open to questions.
Cool. So just a brief introduction about me and my story. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm Rob, and I'm a adoptive dad to two boys who my husband and I adopted 7 years ago. Almost exactly to the day 7 years ago they moved in. So we were in the middle of introductions this time 7 years ago. Our two boys are 14 and 11, so we've got one just about to start GCSEs and one just about to start secondary school come September. So it's a very interesting time of transitions in our household at the moment. We went through the process fairly quickly in terms of being approved as adopters, but then we had quite a lengthy, well, not that long actually, but it felt like forever time trying to find a match for boys, and we had a couple of prospective matches that fell through quite a way into the process, which is obviously a really difficult time, and it was very kind of challenging emotionally. But we ended up meeting our boys at what's called an adoption activity day, and from that day onwards, it was a fairly swift process, and within 3 months the boys had moved in. So yeah, that's how our family was formed, and I'm happy to answer any questions about anything related to our journey.
Thank you very much. And Rob's also the Director of Membership.
Oh yeah, I should have said that, but I didn't think it was relevant to this conversation.
So heads up our team, so thank you. Katie, do you want to explain who you are and introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Katie. So I am Adopter Support Manager at Adoption UK. I write the lovely newsletters that go out on Fridays if your members may receive those. And our family, we have two children. So we adopted a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. That's when they came to our house, or our home. And they are now 8 and 10. So I'm devastated that I have a 10-year-old, a tween. It's gone way too quickly, way too quickly. Yeah, and we had a fairly difficult process. So, well, initially my husband signed us up for adoption without telling me. It was always something we were going to do, and from the get-go, we always knew we were going to adopt because it's something I always wanted to do anyways. But then, yeah, I got a phone call from our local authority going, with regards to the introductions day that you were, or the, intros day, we have this day open. And thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. And my husband goes, oh yeah, by the way, I signed us up for adoption. So I was thrown right into it. We had a very difficult process. It was easy to find our children, but then the process to bringing them home took quite a long time due to both parents contesting the adoption and things. And then even afterwards, it took a long time to get the adoption order. And again, because of both parents were contesting the adoption order. And yeah, we definitely needed people on our side, and we didn't have the people on our side when we needed them, I think. So that's what I'm bringing to the group this evening. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Katie. Your sound's a bit crackly.
Oh, am I? I don't know how to change that. I'm very sorry.
Thanks, Katie. Jo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Jo and I'm also part of the membership team. I am Communities Officer. I, like Rob, became a parent almost 7 years ago, and I now have a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. The 7 and 6-year-old are biological siblings. So our 7-year-old moved in the August, then we got a phone call in the September to say, yeah, are you interested in the next one, which we were. So they came thick and fast, and then we had a little break, and then our daughter arrived. It will be 3 years, God, 3 years this October that she's been with us. She'll be 4 in November. So yeah, our babies arrived with us as babies. So I think out of the group here this evening, mine were younger than everyone else's when they first moved in. So yeah, so you know, like Katie, I think my eldest is almost approaching the tweens stage. Lots of interesting conversations at the moment. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Jo. Charlotte.
Hello, I managed to unmute myself relatively painlessly then, which was useful. Contrary to what I've displayed already, I am Digital Engagement Manager for Adoption UK. So I do work with the lovely membership team, but also the comms team too, and everyone else for the charity. I am a mum to a little boy who is 3, and he came home when he was 7 months old. And he's just brilliant. He's amazing. So we had quite a rough, I wouldn't say rough, actually, quite a long process going through the journey. We were asked to pause at different stages for different reasons. One of them being that we hadn't lived together for 2 years despite being married by that point, which was a bit of a strange one, but rules are rules. And then once we were approved, I think actually before we'd even been approved, we'd been approached tentatively with a couple of profiles. So actually once we were approved, it was quite quick. I think we were approved in the July and our little one came home in the November. So that was relatively quick, although like Rob says, it doesn't feel like it's very quick at the time. It feels like you're waiting a long time. So yeah, happy to answer questions tonight.
Thank you very much. And my name's Claire. I'm the Community and Support Manager. I adopted my son when he was 7, and that's just over 10 years ago. So I win with feeling very old because I have a nearly 18-year-old. Although he's been practicing being 18 since he was about 7. He's now much taller than I am. I have to stand on the 2nd step to be anywhere near his eye line. So so welcome everybody. So we are open to any questions. So if anyone's got any questions, just jot them in chat. While you're thinking about your questions, I'm just going to ask the team just to say what one thing they wish that they'd have known, or a top tip.
Ooh.
Who wants to start?
Not me, because I need to think of one.
I've got a top tip, Claire. My top tip would be, don't be afraid to tell people to, in a polite way, mind their own business, because I think lots of people hear adoption, they go, "Ooh, what happened there then?" And lots of people like sort of a bit of salacious backstory. And don't be afraid to stand firm and say, that's not something we're willing to share, that's something we'll explain to our child when the time is ready, because once you've let the cat out of the bag, it won't go back in, and you'll never know who's told who on the school run. So yeah, keep your cards close to your chest, unless something needs to be shared, obviously with friends and family about previous experiences. But I find quite a lot of people are interested in a bit of tittle tattle when they hear the word adoption. So yeah, stand firm. Yeah,
absolutely. That's a really good point, Jo, because I think they see a lot of adopted children as being public property. Definitely. And they wouldn't dream of asking some of these questions. We've kind of joked about it in the past. And yeah, they ask you questions about why you've adopted and about your child's backstory. You wouldn't go up to somebody and ask them what position they were in when they conceived their child. So, you know, it's kind of, you know, it's none of your business. And I always used to blame the social worker and go, I'm really sorry, I'm not allowed to, because the social workers won't let us. Yeah, they're really good.
I think I thought of mine now. Mine would be prepared to sound like a broken record, or, you know, the tape that's on repeat. in every area. So with your kids, you just have to repeat the same thing over and over again to them. I can't count how many times I've repeated the same instructions in the house, like pick your towel up off the floor. You don't, wet towel's not going to dry on the floor, all those kind of things. But also, like, in places like school, particularly in primary school, every single year you'll be having the same conversations with a new teacher, telling them the same things, trying to make sure that they're giving the right support, explaining why your child might need a little bit of different care or attention in the classroom, all those kind of things. And I do feel like a broken record, but it is really important just to keep consistent and keep plugging away, because you are their biggest advocate in their life, and they need you to fight that corner for them. Sometimes it won't feel like a fight, sometimes it'll just pushing on an open door, and sometimes it'll feel like you've got that battering ram that the police use to smash down the door, because you really have to push hard to get seen and heard. But yeah, just keep fighting for it.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks, Rob. Katie, have you got a top tip or something you wish you'd known?
I don't know. I think for me, my top tip would be knowing more about post-adoption depression and feeling validated in admitting to it as well. Understanding post-adoption depression and knowing that it is a physiological change in the makeup of your body and your hormones and things. It's not just it's not a depression that comes along just because your circumstances change it. It is a physiological change in your body, very similar to postnatal depression. And I wish that, we talked more about it, and that it was accepted as kind of, okay, and, everybody knew that. Same with postnatal depression, that, it happens, it may happen to you, and here's what we do about it.
Thank you. Thanks, Katie. And we've actually done a webinar, haven't we, on post-adoption depression, which is available in the members area if anybody's interested in watching that. So thank you. That's a really key point. Charlotte, what's your top tip or something you wish you'd have known?
I'd say be prepared to unlearn what you've learnt, and it could be ingrained within your psyche, from being brought up by your own parents, and that by unlearning it doesn't mean that the way you were brought up is bad, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. So you might read a load of books and you might look around and think everybody is therapeutic parenting, conscious parenting, gentle parenting, and there are going to be days that you will go to bed and think, I've done none of that. I've probably spoken to my little ones in a way that I don't really want to, and and that I have learned or that I've read that is wrong, and have I added to their trauma? And you will beat yourself up, and whilst being prepared to unlearn what you know, be prepared that it's not easy, and don't bash yourself around the head with a wet kipper when it all goes a bit wrong. Lean on your friends and your support network and people that know and that nod when you're talking on a Zoom call like this.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Charlotte. My top tip really is I wish that I'd have been treated like a new mum. So although I had a 7-year-old, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what 7-year-olds did. I didn't know what 7-year-olds ate. I didn't know how far he could go on the swing, how high he could climb. And I just wanted to be treated like a new mum. So what I really wish, and what the message for me to get out to friends and family today, is that just think of whoever's adopting as new parents, that they're not going to know what they're doing. They're not going to have an idea. So if you can be there for them, and it may be on a Friday evening that you when the children are asleep, that you can pop round and just be there for them. That I think is key. That's the message that I'd like to get across. That treat us as if we're brand new. We have no idea what we're doing, and it's scary.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good shout.
Make some meals. Yeah, bring them around like you would a parent of a newborn, because
Yeah.
we're going through our own craziness at that time, aren't we?
No, absolutely. I had to put messages up because I used to burn t-shirts. I forgot to turn the t-shirts inside out. Everything was either burnt or still frozen when I cooked it, because I just couldn't concentrate on anything at all. So yeah, so treat us very much like brand new parents.
Yeah.
As well, on the back of that, I'd say I almost like, I needed my parents more. I became so my parents, like that, especially introductions week. I remember sitting on my sofa and just cuddling up into my dad. And now, you know, usually if I need support, it's my mum. You know, me and my mum and I are really close, very good friends, and love my dad completely. But he was like, during that week, and I think, you know, it lent into what Katie was saying about, you know, post-adoption depression and just being thrown into being a new parent. But yeah, be prepared for, if you're a grandparent, for your kids, if they're going through that adoption process, that they might need you more as a parent-child relationship. Because I know I did, and yeah, I almost felt like I regressed a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remember
Intros are so tiring, aren't they? I found intros exhausting, and you just kind of get back from the day at the foster care and everyone's like, what was it like? What's he like? What, you know, is he sitting up? What's he doing? And you just be like, I just need a bit of peace, because it's so tiring sitting on someone else's couch and feeling very, with the best will in the world, you are being very scrutinised, aren't you? And if the baby cries, you want to be the one who can settle them back down, and sometimes because you're still a stranger, you can't do that. So it is really stressful. And while it is also exciting, don't be disappointed if the person who's going through it in your life just needs an early night and a bath, and not necessarily want to talk about how exciting the day was for hours on end.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you take long road trips, and although you're just sitting there and driving, you're completely exhausted afterwards. And it's kind of the same with this. Although you're there and you're just meeting your child, and you know you should be overwhelmed with joy and happiness and everything, it's all of the, you know, inner workings that are going on, you know, kind of in the background, that just completely wear you out. Same as like when you're driving and you're just completely worn out. Like, that's what I like in it too.
And I remember saying to my mum, a few weeks in, she was great, and she used to phone after every bedtime to see how the day had gone, if the bedtime had been okay. And she'd always ask how my son was. And I remember saying to her one day, Mum, just ask how I am. What about me? Because I'm still your daughter. You just don't seem to ever ask how I am. And I just wanted someone to just ask how I was. It was great that they took an interest in my son, but I was like, but I'm still here and I'm still a person. I haven't just faded away. So yes, I think it's important if you can. It's a shifting balance of relationships, isn't it, when you adopt?
Mm-hmm.
When you become
Also,
a parent.
Sorry. Also, if your son or daughter-in-law or the adopted couple, if one of them is from another country and their parents aren't near them, so I'm American. My family's all in America, and you know we're here. My husband's parents are English, but I didn't have that kind of support from them in the way that he would. And with my parents not being here, it was just so difficult. My mom actually did quit her job and came out and lived with us for a month, because I was just in that much. I just needed somebody here with me to help me. And yeah, that was like my saving grace, having my mom here. So yeah.
It could be really great if you can have the conversation beforehand over what you think you're going to need, and whether that's doing the washing, whether it's preparing meals, whether it's someone who's going to come and cut the grass. If you can have those conversations before you adopt, it can make a huge difference.
That's also a great way. Oh, because families aren't meant to, you're not supposed to throw your child into meeting all of their extended family immediately, because they need to bond with their parents first. But if you come around and cut their grass and things, at least they can see you, and they start to understand that you're a person in their life, and it's not as awkward and difficult for them to meet you finally, like speak to you because they've already seen you.
I think that can depend as well, kind of on the age of the child that's been adopted, because ours were a tad bit older, so they were 7 and 4 when they, you know, moved in with us, and we very much let it be the child-led experience in that sense. So, you know, it was our boys who said, because they knew that my parents, their grandparents, lived literally 7 houses away down the street. I think it was only the second day of them being at our house, and that, you know, our littlest one was like, well, when am I going to see grandma and grandpa then? Because he'd had his book and he'd seen the video and he knew, you know, he knew who they were and stuff. So we were like, well, do you want to give him a call? And so he like picked up the phone and, you know, made that phone call. And my dad still talks about it now, like the happiest phone call he's ever received, kind of thing, because his little voice was like, hello, are you coming out to play football? And my dad was like, who's that? And he's like, it's me, of course. And so that was like their first interaction, and then that was it. And, you know, we did it, and it was a very short kind of 20 minutes, half an hour visit, and it was very early in that process, but it was right for the boys, and they wanted that. You know, and we didn't suddenly, you know, drop the kids off for a sleepover for date night the following day or anything like that, but it was very much like that was the start of their journey of relationship with, you know, their grandparents, and it was, you know, very natural in that way. So
yeah, we had very similar. The social worker actually got my brother to bring his 2 children around the day after my son moved in, because it was felt that he really needed to know that he wasn't the only child in the family. And he'd seen photos, but he needed to actually meet them to know. He come from a very busy foster care placement where there were 6 other children, to suddenly being on his own. So he needed to know that there's other children. And my son has a great relationship with his cousins because of that. That first meeting was quite strange. They were all quite nervous about meeting each other and walking in the house. But yeah, within a couple of minutes, we'd set a game up that they could all play, and they were playing away. So yes. Got a question here. How long would it usually be before friends and family can start to be introduced to the children?
So, do you want me to start? And people can, yeah. Again, I think it depends on the age of the adopted child, and I think that, you know, the position that they're in and the state that they're in, you know, they might be in a really good place where, you know, like Claire said, like my experience, they're ready and they're eager to start meeting other people within the family, you know, or the friend network. It might be the opposite, and it might be that they're just not in a position where they can deal with seeing anyone else, because the move to their new home has been so traumatic that they need that time and that space to just feel settled and safe in their new home. So it's really hard to kind of put a measure of time on it without knowing the individual case, I would say. Like I said, you know, the introduction for our sons to meet their grandparents was very quick, but a lot of the other, you know, friends and network was a lot longer. But I think within kind of 2 weeks of them being at home with us, they'd met a bunch of, or they were starting to meet a bunch of people, but that was because the position that we were in, like I said, the boys moved in around this time of year, and we were encouraged to kind of let our eldest go and do a couple of days at his new school before the term ended, before some holidays and that kind of thing. So that was almost like part of that process was like, well, if he's going to go into school, it would be good for him to meet a few of the friends that are going to be in the school before he does that, and etc. So it was kind of trying to, you know, pick the right engagements and interactions that they would have to help with that transition. And also that then helped because we then went straight into some holidays, which was obviously a long period with no kind of structure or anything. So we then tried to build up lots of those friendships over the summer holidays, so that when they landed in school in September, they'd had that time to meet people that they were going to be seeing in school, and, you know, meet the parents of the children and all those kind of things as well. So yeah, that, I think it just, you have to kind of tailor it to the individual needs and the kind of time of year and the age of the child and all those kind of things as well.
We were told a week, I think, with our first, and we stuck to that. But I think it was a mistake because our house isn't a quiet house. So he moved again from a busy foster placement into our house that was just myself and my husband, and was relatively really quiet. And actually that's not a representation of what his future family life was going to be. So we did do the week with him, but with our second and our third child, we just felt our gut feeling, when's it right to go. And we often went to other people's houses, because then you can sense if your child's had enough it's much easier to come away than to ask somebody,
Definitely.
actually, could you leave now, because I can tell he's tired and needs to go down for a nap. It's a tricky conversation to have. So I think whilst you don't want to be taking your child to, you know, lots of different venues and locations, sometimes it's better to be able to walk away when you feel everyone's had enough.
I just thought as well, one of the things that it always like rings in my head of what we kind of were told or learned is when you start doing those meetups and things like that, is kind of pre-warning the other adults that you're meeting to remind them that you're still learning to be the primary carer for those children. So the automatic reaction if a kid falls over is the nearest parent to go down and scoop them up and go, oh, you know, are you okay? Whereas actually it's really important, because you're trying to build that primary carer role with that child, and the child with you, is to kind of just say to the parents, like, you know, while we're there, if anything happens, you know, don't offer the child food directly. Ask me if it's okay and I will do it. If he falls over, you know, don't go and scoop him up and try and kind of soften the blow or whatever. Let me go and do that, or kind of say, oh, Rob, he's just fallen over. Do you want to go and sort him out or whatever? Because it's really important that they know that they're looking to you for that care and support. And also another thing was, we would have the conversations and explain, like, we are going to the park for 30 minutes and we're going to see these people. Here's a picture of the people that we're seeing. And then when we finished at the park, you are going to come home with us back to our house here, and we will be here for the rest of the day then. So just giving them that kind of realistic expectation of what is going to happen and what that engagement is. And like I said, that's different because ours were that bit older and they understood, but it was really important. And to this day, you know, 7 years in, our youngest son still relies on that kind of information. He still asks every day when he wakes up first thing in the morning, what are we doing today? Where are we going? Who are we going to see? And what are we eating for dinner tonight? Like, before he's even had his breakfast. And it's just really important, that reassurance. So making the other adults in your network aware of that, that need for those kids that have just gone through a big traumatic upheaval of moving and having their primary carer change and stuff. That need is very relevant and very real.
And
People
it feels
may
very kind of, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, people may hear the word funneling. So from people that are adopting, you may hear from your social worker that they call it funneling, and that's where you do everything for the children. So as Rob said, it's about you making it very clear that you're a primary carer.
Yeah.
So sorry, Katie.
Sorry, I have chocolate in my mouth now.
Serves you right for eating chocolate.
I know, sorry. I was going to say, along with the same thread, for friends and family of adopted families, don't feel put out or kind of upset. It's a very kind of unnatural thing for the parents to go, oh, we can't meet yet, or our son might be a little bit awkward with you, or our daughter doesn't like, is very nervous around tall men with beards or something, and so we have to, you know, really slowly do this.
Yeah.
We have a whole lifetime with our families, and you know, there's tons and tons of time to meet the little ones, and as exciting as it is, those poor little things have been through complete and utter trauma and, you know, everything in their lives, and they just need to go to a home and settle. And so, yeah, I think it's just recognizing that the parents aren't doing it to be horrid or anything. Yeah, it's just they have to kind of, you know, ring fence their children
And I
and
think
make sure they're looking after them.
we had, you know, what kind of Joe was saying, and Rob, we had a play tent that we put in our dining room, that we put blankets and cushions in. Just, it was a pop-up TARDIS actually from Doctor Who. And my son knew that that was a safe place. So if everything got too much, he could go in there and he knew to absolutely that he'd be left alone. We'd check on him, obviously, but everybody else knew that that was time to go or to disappear, because it got too much. And I think we actually kept that play tent up in our dining room for about 2 years. And he'd often just go in there when he needed that space. And the other thing I just want to say is about not taking lots of presents around when you first meet the child, because it can give the wrong message. You know, it's often better to put money into a bank account for them, or buy a gift card that the parents can go out and buy stuff rather than turning up. It goes against everything you normally do for a new baby. Because, you know, if someone has a new baby, you normally turn up with gifts, you've got balloons, you've got banners, there's lots of fuss made, the baby's passed around to everybody. And when you adopt, it's kind of completely the opposite. So it's about thinking about those things in advance, because adoptive parents will be very grateful for having gift cards that they can go and buy what they need, because often we don't know what our children are coming with.
Yeah, that's really good.
What's your early days experience?
So obviously our little one was 7 months old. We live in quite a small village that contains quite a number of older people, curious older people, and they are lovely and they are wonderful, and most of them, absolutely, I say all of them absolutely adore him now. But it was suddenly noted by these people that I was suddenly pushing a pram with not a newborn in. So actually, I think I went out once on my own very soon after he'd come home, sort of the day after or something. And I then phoned mum and said, I know that you're not meant to meet him for a week, but can you just walk with me and be my barrier? Because, you know, Gladys up the road is going, I didn't know you were pregnant. You didn't look pregnant. You look very well now. He's a big baby. It's just like, oh my goodness. You know, I just can't cope with this. I'm just trying to get my head around stuff. So, and again, I haven't got a big family, but we've got very close family down here. My husband's family is not from around here. They are, and I've seen in the comments about being two-hour drive away. Yeah, my husband's family about 3 hours away, and it is that remoteness is difficult to lend support. But I think just to pick up on that, you know, how best to help and support our son and daughter-in-law when we live 2 hours away. It is just checking in, like Katie said. It's just knowing that they won't always want a 40-minute conversation as to how the day has gone, and it's going to be really difficult if they just say, yeah, it's fine, but I've got to go to bed. And then the next day they may want a whole 2 hours on the phone to just completely, you know, digest or offload what's happened. And it is, yeah, I suppose it's about kind of putting, I don't want this to sound rude, but almost putting your own feelings to one side and just, yeah, going back to parenting as you would a toddler. You know, a toddler doesn't care whether you wake up with a headache or you know, if you've got food in the fridge or anything else. It doesn't matter you know, like today, my toddler did not care what was going on today at work, and he was up for 3 hours last night having a party. And it is kind of like being that sort of parent again, you putting your whole emotions and everything to one side and just kind of remotely helping them through it. Katie, I don't know whether you want to pick up on that because your family's even further away.
Yeah, I wouldn't say quit your job and move in with them for a month. That was quite exceptional circumstances. But so what my parents did, I mean, they checked in constantly, and my parents they're always there if I need to call about anything. And my family is extremely close, but in not like huggy, lovey kind of close. We're just like, we just know each other very well, and we're kind of very close in that way. But since becoming a parent, I now call my parents all the time and go, I know why you reacted in this way. I know why you did that now. I totally get it. Like, the light bulb went on. And my parents kept that. So they love just having me be able to, like Charlotte said, digest and kind of, whether it's offload or just try to understand my place in this world now as a parent, and my role as a parent, and just that conversation with them and going, yep, this is what we did. And these are the things we did that we regret doing. And, maybe we would have tried it this way. And just having that kind of open conversation is wonderful. But also, my parents did a lot of not research, but they learned the kind of basics on attachment and what it's like for an adopted child to move in with the family, and kind of the how to parent an adopted child type books. And they really listened to me when I said we went out to America for 3 weeks with the kids, and we had to stay with my mom. And my youngest has the second he sees sugar, almost, he is a maniac. We have to have just 0 sugar as much as possible. And so my mom knew to get rid of anything sugar in the house, and she kind of locked down her house to make it as right for our family. And they did that kind of, if they fell over, my parents didn't run to the children. They said, oh, you need to, and they kind of helped me along, very much in the same with newborn parents. Go, oh, why don't you try holding them this way, or why don't you try that, and giving those tips. That's when you need to come in, but at an older age, and go, oh, they fell over, or oh, your child's trying to sneak some snacks, you best get over there. That kind of thing. So yeah.
Thank you. And I think if you've got a long drive and you're going to be staying over, it's about not putting too many expectations on the family, so that you, if it's your first few visits, the new adopters aren't expected to host you, really. If you can be as self-sufficient as you possibly can and take that pressure off. So it may be that you end up booking yourself into a hotel if you're going to come down for a weekend, but that first visit's only going to be for an hour. You're not going to be expecting to have food and everything else laid on. If you get a cup of tea or coffee, it's a bonus. And then you're going to go away, and the new family don't need to worry about you and your needs. Because I think if you're trying to take on and make sure that your parents are okay, because normally you host and they're always around there, it can add so much more. Where if someone says, we've got this, we're going to pop in for half an hour today, we're going away, we're going to come back tomorrow, we're going to do another half hour, which is the right time for you, and we'll come back Sunday.
Yeah. And
just take that pressure off can make a huge difference.
Even still, that kind of pressure is amazing. When my in-laws come over, sometimes they'll go, oh, I'll get the kettle on, I'll do this, I'll get that ready, and they'll bring food over and stuff. And that is an enormous weight off of my shoulders, because I don't have to look after my kids and my in-laws and make sure everybody's happy. I just know that when they come over, they will sort out all of that kind of logistical things, and I just have to focus on keeping my kids from throwing themselves out their windows, or throwing rocks at cars, or whatever they're doing that day, that I'm just like, I just focus on my kids, and the kind of bare minimum, and that is the best thing for when my in-laws come over.
Thank you.
I was just going to add, because I think the question was how can they best help and support, and I think by being on this session, you're already kind of showing that you're committed to being the best kind of help and support that you can be. And I think just by trying to understand, just by doing the learning that you can do, there's a lovely gentleman who is in the local community group that I run in our local area, and he's a granddad via adoption, and he's been to every single meeting that we've done for the last 2 years, and he is just there because he wants to understand us as adopters. So he just sits and he listens, and then he shares his own stories as well. And he said, just by listening to other people who are adopting, that helps him be the best grandparent he can be to his grandson, but also the best parent that he can be to his daughter and son-in-law when he sees them going through a difficult time. He's heard it from other people, he's read the books, he's been on the webinars. So I think that is the best thing that you can be doing, because then when you do have that opportunity to meet them or spend time with your grandkids or your nephews or nieces or whoever you are in that connected circle, you will have empathy, you will have the knowledge, you will have the understanding, as much as the parent who is trying their best to hold it together and do what needs to be done, and all those kind of things. So, you know, I think that generally is the best thing, the best bit of support and help that you can offer is just telling them, I get it, I understand, I hear you, we're here for you, you know, you do you, babe, and we'll be here to support you.
There's no judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely the biggest. But thank you. Thanks for that, Rob. That's great. Got another question here. How common is it for birth parents to use social media to try and contact and trace their children? Who wants to take that? Charlotte, do you want to lead on this?
Yeah, I'll try. So I think it's very pertinent for today because, you know, that we have launched the adoption bureau, which has seen, I think it's about a 4% increase in 13 to 18-year-olds having what's called unsolicited contact with their birth family on social media. So it is, you know, if you take that stat, it is becoming more common, and I don't think we can get away from the fact that social media has opened up that line of communication. I would also though say that we know from working with the media that when these stories come up, they contact us to try and get hold of the worst case scenario. And for instance, our education policy advisor was interviewed by a very prominent radio station yesterday and was dropped from the cut because she didn't give them the sensational story that they wanted, and she gave them the balanced response. So when you read these things within the media, please know that it does happen, and it is good to raise awareness of that kind of extreme end of things, but that is, I would say, the kind of exception to the rule. Yes, it does go on. On the flip side, we've recently worked with two incredibly inspiring women, an adoptive mum and a birth mum, who themselves connected through social media, and now they have face-to-face contact with their 4-year-old, and they have got an incredibly positive story to talk about, and how, you know, that has impacted their lives in such a positive way, but more importantly has impacted their son's life in such an important and amazing way. So I would say that the worrying stories are the ones maybe that sit in the middle of that really great and really awful, because they're the ones that kind of probably don't maybe get spoken about, and it is the children that are either contacted by the birth family or they go out looking for birth family as well, and I think that can if adoption isn't spoken about in an open way within the adoptive family, sort of, you know, under their roof, then that can cause problems. I think if we try and have as open and as honest conversation about identity and life story with our children from the beginning, we will hope to guide through some of the scarier or sort of more what's the word I'm trying to think of, the more sides of social media, negative sides of social media.
And I think leading on to that, when adopters say, please don't put photos of my children on social media, or if they're going to be bridesmaids, that can we be careful where those photos go, or Christmas or school, as proud as you are and you're wanting to share your grandchildren or your nieces and nephews with the world, it's very unlikely you're going to know all the details about their background and the reasons why parents are saying they can't go on social media. As much as I know you want to show your friends about how cute they look, you just can't do it, because parents will know what's going on. So I think that's one of the messages. It's about respecting the information and the requests that you're given. So
Yeah.
it may be, well, I'm only going to share it with 3 of my friends, it's okay. But you don't know where birth family often live, or who knows who, and it can be a very small world.
Yeah.
Can I jump in on that one as well? So I have personal experience from this, but also as the line manager to the Adoption UK helpline team. Birth parents contacting young adopted people, or vice versa, young adopted people contacting birth parents through social media, is increasingly is one of the bigger kind of queries. The more we get more and more queries about this through our helpline team, and it does seem to be something that's happening quite often. But there's, with early intervention, or not early intervention, but like Charlotte said, speaking to your children about their adoption and being open with them about everything from as early as you can, will, it lends, a lot of in your favor, to, avoiding issues like that, with especially with your children reaching out to birth family. I have social media accounts. I have Facebook, Instagram, and the likes, but I avoid at all costs, or as much as possible, putting my children on Facebook. Their birth mother has 11 Facebook profiles. She's very crafty. She's always found their social worker, even though their social worker would change her name, or have different variations of her name and things on Facebook. She always found her somehow, and would always post her, put her on blast, as they say, and go, this is the woman who's stealing my children, and all of that. So we were warned about having birth family on social media, or putting the children on social media, because of birth family. And my father-in-law did not respect that, and posted pictures of our children after a night of us having a bit of a falling out, which led in, almost police and things, getting involved in stuff, because they really genuinely could be putting our children and our family at a significant risk. They didn't know the full story at the time, because it wasn't, like we said earlier, it's not our story to share, it's our children's story. We know it because we need to know it, but it's our children's story, and we can't be telling everybody about, what's going on with our children. So, yeah, please respect adopted families. Do not share pictures and things. Adoption is hard enough as it is. Parents are always looking over their shoulder when they're out with their children. And, social media just adds another layer of anxiety onto a lot of adopted families.
Jo, your 3 are littlies and are at school. How have you overcome some of the, school photos and school plays? Because you have to be quite creative sometimes, don't you?
So me personally, I'm not on Facebook, I am on Instagram, and only last week I took my daughter and 3 of the little toddler friends to the farm, and my friend did, because she knows my thoughts, messaged me to say, do you mind if I put the group photo on Instagram? And I said, can you just crop her out of it? And she did, and that was fine. Because just like you said, even if you just sent to 3 people, I'm so paranoid. All you need is someone to screenshot that image, and you've totally lost control of it. You don't know who sent it to who. So I have got a 0 face policy of my children on social media, my account than anyone else's, and everyone is aware of that. When they started school, we had the dilemma of, do we sign a consent form to allow them to be in their school Twitter account, for example, or the newsletter if their team had won a prize or whichever. we decided, because they never name the children, we were actually advised to change our children's first names due to their extremely unusual and traceable birth names. So we took the calculated risk to allow them to be in school photos. The names are never there. When they moved in with us, they were all under one. So I think you'd probably have quite a job facially recognising them. We're not we are in the same city, but we're not amazingly close to birth family geographically. And we didn't want them, as they got older, to feel alienated in terms of being asked to step out of team shots, or being asked to, you know, when they have World Book Day, they'll always take a picture of whoever's coming in which costume, and we didn't want to exclude them from that. So my eldest is just finishing year 2. So far, it's not flagged up any issues. So far, so good. And I don't anticipate it will, for the reason that they've been with us for so long. Their names are different. I think we'd be pretty unlucky for them to be traced that route, I think.
Thanks, Jo. Thank you. Rob, did you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so our experience has been that because our kids were quite a lot older when they came to live with us, and we felt like they were more facially recognisable because they were older when the birth parents would have last seen them and that kind of thing. We did sign the form at school to say no photos to be taken, and it's been really challenging, like, to not to police that, because on the whole, apart from a couple of slip-ups which I won't go into, on the whole the school have been okay with it in terms of not taking their photo, but it's the emotional impact that it's had on the kids that has been the most difficult thing to manage, and the school are not sensitive in understanding how the kids are feeling about it. So a perfect example, my youngest son is in the last year of primary school at the moment, so they've been doing various things in year 6, you know, activities for the end of term and that kind of thing, and so they did some filming, and instead of giving my youngest son an alternative job to do because he couldn't be on camera, they didn't think, oh well, let's make him the cameraman, or he can be the assistant director and he can stand here next to the teacher and have a job to do that. No, they just made him sit in the corner and watch the rest of the class all doing this filming activity, which included being on the adventure playground. So my son had to just sit on the grass and watch all of his friends playing on the adventure playground, laughing and joking around while being filmed on camera. So that is just like a perfect example of how the school aren't understanding and not sensitive to our wishes of him not being filmed or being photographed, and also the needs of him as a young boy, you know, having to sit and watch all of his friends like playing and joking and doing something special that's extra curricular outside of the classroom. So that's been the most challenging thing. So we made the decision when they reached, like, as they get to secondary school, that we will allow their photos to be taken. And I've actually sent an email this week actually to primary school and said, can you just, from now until the end of term, he's only got 4 weeks left or 3 weeks left at the school or whatever, can you just let Logan, can you just let him be in anything, you know, any photos of sports day, you know, the end of year 6 party, whatever it is, just let him be in the photos now, because I think the risk is very low and I don't want any more detrimental impact to him of feeling like he's missed out on that end of year 6 thing. But it has been a challenge.
And I'm completely the other extreme, that we have absolutely no risk. My son wanted to be in photos and didn't want to miss out, so he's on my social media, he's quite happy doing that. So there are the extremes, aren't there, that, you know, and everywhere in between, that we don't, you know.
Is everyone else losing Claire, or is it just me?
No, I'm losing. Yeah, I've lost Claire.
Claire, we've lost you, I'm afraid. So
we do not feel that we have any risk from birth family.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say as well.
the face that she's frozen on my screen is brilliant. I just want to say.
Bless her. I'll just jump in while Claire's
Go on, Katie.
Also, be careful with having pictures of your adopted children or your adopted family, friends, children on your desk at work. because I found out that somebody that I worked with, her daughter was engaged to our son's birth father.
Wow.
And that was way too close to home,
Yeah.
especially as he was the dangerous person in the relationship.
Yeah.
And that was where I was working before Adoption UK. I wasn't at Adoption UK.
And I think that's the thing, is that you just don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, that 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
Yeah, way too close is awful.
Yeah. It is. And also, you know, like, I think we've given a good broad spectrum of experiences on this front, and you just have to be sensitive to the individual backstory of the child and make sure that it's right for you as adopters as well. I hate the fact that we haven't had photos on social media and all that kind of stuff for our kids, but we've done it because it made us feel the safest in that situation. I think the risk was fairly low, but we know that there was a risk, so therefore we just stuck to our guns and kind of made it that is the case. And it feels horrible being that parent that, you know, has to pull the child out the side of the photo when the birthday candles are being blown at a friend's party, or have to go back to the parent who's hosted the party and say, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but can you take that photo down because, you know, they're still in, my son's still in the photo," or whatever. It's horrible, and, you know, it can be really frustrating. But there is other ways of sharing those memories and photos with family and friends, and, you know, WhatsApp groups, private Facebook groups, all that kind of stuff is a good way of doing it. So yeah, I think there's another question on here, which I'm just conscious of time, so let's get to this question before we kind of get to the kind of 9 o'clock point. So I don't know who wants to take this one, but the question is, what is therapeutic parenting and why is it important? Who would like
voodoo magic.
Go on, Charlotte, tell us your experience of therapeutic parenting.
It's tough. I would say it's tough, and it doesn't come naturally, and that is my Bible. As Katie's just I think it goes back to what I said right at the beginning. It is unlearning probably the way you've been brought up, first and foremost. It is using a lot of playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, empathy.
You have read the book.
I have read the book, yeah. And it's about, so one thing that I always think of, because I think actually the point where you lose the therapeutic parenting thread is at high stress situations. And what I always bear in mind is that it is that the phrase connection before correction. So and beyond the behavior, that often a behavior of a child, that's their way of communicating to you. It's not that they're naughty, it's not that they're trying to annoy you, it's not that they're trying to wreck your day. Underneath that kind of behavior that you see is something propelling that. So to connect with what they need you to connect with. Are they frustrated? Are they angry? Are they tired? Are they hungry? What has propelled them to behave in that way? Connect with them first, fulfill that need that they need to fulfilled, and then when you have the space and time to do so, correct the behavior if you need to.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's such a vast subject to try and tackle, isn't it? There are some webinars on the membership area that you can access as a member, and there are some that are open to non-members as well. But yeah, there's ones on therapeutic parenting. There's also a great webinar which was with Dan Hughes, who's the founder of DDP Therapy, and the term PACE, which is what Charlotte was just quoting about: playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. And he explains it brilliantly as well. So I would definitely, we can probably send some links out in the follow-up email from this session tonight as well. So I'm just conscious of time. Claire, I know you're back, but I think you're still buffering or something, aren't you? Is there any other questions that anyone wanted to get in before we kind of round off the session? Because we're here and we're happy to answer anything. No question is deemed as silly or a bad one to ask. So feel free to throw any last minute questions in. Someone said thank you so much, it's been very helpful and interesting. That's good. It's good to hear that we've been of some use.
And I'm sorry about that, I've just turned the 17-year-old off of gaming.
We did hear.
Therapeutic parenting.
What I would say about therapeutic parenting as well, it could, you know, some people call it gentle parenting, curious parenting. I've heard that, connective parenting.
Yeah.
On social media, we do try and share some little, you know, some graphics and things that help. So sometimes I find that those big books that, you know, you try and sit down and read in Awana are really too much to take in. So like Rob says, the webinars that we have, or some of the social media posts and assets that we have, that we try and, you know, explain ways in which, you know, or sort of tips and how to parent without sounding dictatorial. You know, hints and tips and situations that could help, and explain why it's important as well within those posts. So
I think we
don't follow what I do.
or me. I think we touched on it earlier, but one of the key things for, you know, the extended family, so as grandparents or uncles and aunties through adoption, all that kind of thing, is take the lead from the adoptive parent. Like, if they are parenting in a certain way, there will be a reason why. So try and take the lead and try and listen. I did have, you know, a head-on collision with my dad in the early days of us with the boys, because they didn't understand why we were parenting the way that we were parenting, or the, you know, the sanctions. That sounds a horrible word, but kind of the rules that we'd laid out for our kids. They didn't understand that because it wasn't how they'd parented. But once we were able to kind of sit down and explain it, then it was fine. But it was really frustrating when, as a parent, you felt undermined because you'd said, you know, you're not having pudding unless you've had a piece of fruit. Stupid example, but for example, you know, and then my dad at the dinner table saying, oh, it's okay, you can have the pudding anyway. And it's like, well, no, that's not okay, because, you know, I'm trying to set boundaries and trying to, you know, teach about, you know, values and all that kind of stuff, and kind of making the right choices. And you just undermine me trying to set those boundaries, and I've got 7 years to make up because I haven't had the chance to parent this child for the first 7 years of their life. So, you know, that is really difficult, and, you know, really important to keep them on that journey with you.
Yeah, and I think even as on the back of that as well, Rob, is even if, and Joe, I think you'll agree, even if those children have come to you as little babies, you are still making up from their, you know, their time in utero, which can be incredibly stressful and does have a huge impact on the fetus. You know, if birth mum is in a stressful situation, I've learned very recently that fetus doesn't even move in the same way that a relaxed birth mum would, you know, or the fetus would be in a relaxed birth mum. So we're often, even when they come at sort of such a young age, there is so much before that, you know, that we have to take into account and take into consideration when we're parenting. And love isn't enough, and that's why we have to, you know, therapeutically parent and rely on each other, you know, our peers for support, etc., because there's so much more to parenting through adoption than I think a lot of people realise.
Yeah,
it's a really common misconception, I think, that I hear, like in your situation, Charlotte, and my own. Oh, well, they were babies, they won't remember. Please don't think that their early experiences haven't impacted on them detrimentally, because likely they have. So don't assume that the younger they are, the better the outcome necessarily, because it's not always the case.
and actually some of the trauma is learnt trauma when they find out that, you know, when they're a little bit older and they find out that a bit about their life story, or, you know, that they were adopted or what have you. That's when the trauma starts to seep in as well, because it's mental trauma of knowing that they were abandoned and not understanding and not being able to process that information. You know, my youngest has got a very different relationship with his life story to my eldest, because he just doesn't understand. Like, he was a baby when he was removed from his birth mum, so what was she like and why was that and how did that happen, etc. But my eldest was 4.5 and remembers everything and remembers what life was like. So yeah, very different.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Sorry about the glitch in the middle.
Right.
Parenting at its best. So, but thank you all so much for joining us tonight and for asking the questions. It's been lovely to have the opportunity to reach out to extended friends and family, because for us, we know that that's a huge difference it can make. And just having you all here just shows how engaged you are and how brilliant you're going to be at supporting your friends and family that are adopting. If anyone has any other questions, please jot us an email. I shall drop my email address in to the chat.
And just to say as well, don't forget that grandparents, uncles, aunties, friends, cousins, etc. can be members of Adoption UK as well and benefit from all the resources and the webinars and the magazine and all that kind of stuff. And many people do and really value that membership as an extended family member through adoption.
And membership with us isn't just about us supporting everybody as well. It's as much as you supporting your adoptive families through the support given to us, so that we can give these resources to adoptive families and things as well. So
yeah,
thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. But thanks for joining us.
Thanks all.
Bye.
everyone.